Well, hello, Andrew Doubleday here again, and today our little message is based on the Gospel Lectionary for Sunday the 27th of June. Mark chapter 5 verses 21 to 43. It's the interweaving of two stories. When Jesus had crossed again in the boat to the other side, a great crowd gathered around him, and he was by the sea. Then one of the leaders of the synagogue named Jairus came, and when he saw him fell at his feet and begged him repeatedly, "My little daughter is at the point of death. Come and lay your hands on her so that she may be made well and live." So he went with him, and a large crowd followed him and pressed in on him. Now there was a woman who had been suffering from hemorrhages for 12 years. She had endured much under many physicians and had spent all that she had, and she was no better, but rather grew worse. She had heard that Jesus had heard about him and came up behind him in the crowd and touched his cloak. For she said, "If I but touch his clothes, I will be made well." Immediately her hemorrhages stopped, and she felt in her body that she was healed of her disease. Immediately aware that power had gone forth from him, Jesus turned about in the crowd and said, "Who touched my clothes?" And his disciples said to him, "You see the crowd pressing in on you. How can you say, 'Who touched me?'" He looked all around to see who had done it. But the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came in fear and trembling, fell down before him and told him the whole truth. He said to her, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed of your disease." While he was still speaking, some people came from the leader's house to say, "Your daughter is dead. Why trouble the teacher any further?" But overhearing what they said, Jesus said to the leader of the synagogue, "Do not fear, only believe." He allowed no one to follow him except Peter, James, and John, the brother of James. And when they came to the house of the leader of the synagogue, he saw a commotion, people weeping and wailing loudly. When he had entered, he said to them, "Why do you make a commotion and weep? The child is not dead, but sleeping." And they laughed at him. Then he put them all outside and took the child's father and mother and those who were with him and went in where the child was. He took her by the hand and said to her, "Talitha cum," which means, "Little girl, get up." Immediately the girl got up and began to walk about. She was about 12 years old. At this they were overcome with amazement. He strictly ordered them that no one should know this, and told them to give her something to eat. We've got two stories, haven't we, here, interwoven, of a woman who had been bleeding for 12 years, and a young girl, only 12 years old, started bleeding about the same time. So she was born about the same time this woman was bleeding. Woven together, their stories interlacing together. So I want us first to notice the way that Jesus triages life, about where he puts his priorities. And it seems that he deals with whatever is right in front of him. And right in front of him at this moment, as the story gets underway, becomes the older woman. And as he attends to her, a young girl dies. Yet, as always, this seems to be no obstacle to Jesus. Death is simply part of a process, not the irreversible end of it. For Jesus, it's not like a switch that has been flicked, that cannot be unflicked, and now it's all over. It's just another step in a process that can be rewound. And that's what he does. Perhaps what happens to the woman with the issue of blood is a clue to what happens to the young girl. We read that Jesus was immediately aware that power had gone forth from him. The woman's healing took something from Jesus. It depleted him in some way. Just as she was immediately aware that she had been healed, so Jesus was immediately aware that he had lost something. Power had gone out from him. Just as she positively felt better, he now negatively felt depleted. I want to suggest that there was an exchange. Jesus' well-being for her sickness. I grew up on Isaiah 53 as a passage referencing the Messiah. I'm aware that there are alternative views and that many Jewish people see the passage as referring to themselves, suggesting that Christians have co-opted this passage to justify the Christian narrative. Well, maybe. Yet, I find it so compelling that I can see no reason to abandon a perspective that has been so life-giving and personally enriching. I want us to hear today just 2 verses. Isaiah 53 verses 4 and 5. Surely he has borne our infirmities and carried our diseases. Yet we accounted him stricken, struck down by God and afflicted. But he was wounded for our transgressions, crushed for our iniquities. Upon him was the punishment that made us whole, and by his bruises we are healed. In the reading in which I grew up, it presents such a beautiful picture of the life and death of Jesus, the one I know of the Christ, the one who takes this upon himself for me. It powerfully portrays that sense of exchange, our sickness for his well-being, a straight swap. What all this points to is that all Jesus' healings are personally costly to him. Every healing takes something out of him, and I suggest may give him something in exchange that none of us would want. Maybe, maybe not. It's just a thought, yet it's one that points to the depths of God's commitment to us through Jesus. No wonder he gets tired. Last week we saw Jesus sleeping through a storm in the back of a boat. Now perhaps we understand more fully why this might have been the case. He's been out giving out goodness, and taking in melee all day. It's taken a toll on him. And as Jesus takes upon himself the older woman's sickness, perhaps he does the same for the girl. His gift of abundance of life overwhelms her death. As he takes the older woman's sickness into himself, so he takes the young girl's death into himself. I'm aware that for some who are tuned in here, miracles will likely pose a problem. I'm sorry, I can't help you. My invitation is just to receive the bits that you can receive and lay the rest aside. It's what I hope we all do at some level when we're listening to people who share things we're not sure of or strongly disagree with. Let's just take the bits that we can and just spit the bones out. We notice as this older woman reaches out that the touch of faith heals her. She reaches out, she touches in trust and faith, and she's healed. We notice that as Jairus is willing to trust Jesus, even having heard that his daughter has died, that the trust of faith allows the opportunity for new life. An older woman, a younger girl, both given a fuller life, both set free. So where does this all leave us? I want to suggest it leaves us with the awareness that none of our situations are hopeless. that Jesus' mission statement continues to hold good. You remember when he says, I've come that you might have life and have it in all its fullness. We can trust him on it. One of the simplest ways in which many of us struggle is in the area of forgiveness. We struggle to forgive others, often because we struggle to forgive ourselves. So it keeps us small. Our lives are less than they otherwise might be. We don't ever become whom we could be because we carry around with ourselves the sense of shame and guilt. We carry the weight. Yet as we see here, he took the sickness and the death, he also takes the shame and the guilt. Let's hear these two verses from Isaiah 53 again. Hear it all. Surely he has borne our infirmities and carried our diseases. Yet we accounted him stricken, struck down by God, and afflicted. But he was wounded for our transgressions, crushed for our iniquities. Upon him was the punishment that made us whole, and by his bruises we are healed. It's all there. It's a beautiful picture. The forgiveness is complete. It's something that we can grab hold of. Now, it may seem to us that it's wrong. I want to suggest to you, though, it's simply a demonstration of the extent that God is prepared to go to for you and for me. Didn't need to do it that way, but wanted us to know how profoundly and deeply loved we are, so that we can walk in newness of life. We can walk in confidence and in freedom. God bless you.